Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Thrive Careers podcast. My name is Olajumoke Fatoki, and you already know this show is all about helping you go from career confusion to career clarity. And today's conversation is one that I have been looking forward to personally because we are tackling something so many of you have messaged me about in the past. And that's why does getting hired in Canada feel so difficult today? And we have someone in the house today who gets it. He understands this and is here, to share with us from the policy angle and from the insider perspective, which, I'm sure that most of our listeners are also craving to hear. So before we go further, I'd just like him to briefly tell us a little bit. Over to you.
Thank you, Ola. So my name's Garnet Jennis. I'm a Conservative Member of Parliament, and I'm the Shadow Minister for Employment in our Conservative caucus. So I'm focused on employment issues, and I've been speaking a lot about the unemployment crisis affecting young people in this country, in particular, low levels of employment, and a lot of young people, if they're working outside of their field, struggling to align their studies, their career plans with employment. So in the context of that role, my core job is to work on legislation and policy, to advocate to the government for what I see as important policy changes, helping young people and people of all ages get back to work. But also, in addition to talking about legislation and policy, I have a lot of conversations with young people and with employers. So I think those conversations have given me some particular insights into maybe what people can do to navigate these challenging times, even as I try to encourage the government to make policy changes that will open up more opportunities and remove some of those barriers that I know a lot of your listeners are facing.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us on the call today. And I love the tone of this already, and I really appreciate you taking the time. So before we dive into the career stuff and, the core things that we have outlined for today, I'm really curious. And I'm sure that some of our listeners would also like to know, what's your story? You're a father of 6. You've been in the parliament since 2015. You're focused on employment issues, just like you just said in your introduction. And that's really a specific lane to choose. So what drew you to this work, and why does employment issue hold so much place in your heart? Why are you passionate about this topic?
Yeah, well, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to share about that. And I'll start by sharing a bit about my family, because that's what shapes a lot of us in our career direction. So my father was a physician, and medicine was not the career for me. But one thing he really modeled for us was this connection between passion, vocation, and work. He loved what he did. He cared deeply about his patients, and he would talk a lot about that passion and about the various issues that he was working on. And so in my family growing up, there's 5 of us kids, 3 became doctors. So in a majority of cases, that passion translated directly. For me, it was just taking this sense of work isn't just something, okay, you go in for the paycheck, but you want to be able to connect that ability to earn money and provide for your family with something you care deeply about, with an area of passion. And for me, that area of passion was politics. I also have a family that has been touched by international human rights abuses. My grandmother was a Holocaust survivor. Learning about politics and about how badly things can get sometimes was part of my upbringing and part of informing my desire to be involved in public service. So that's kind of how it all started for me. And then after high school, I moved to Ottawa. I studied public policy there, and kind of reinforcing what I was learning in the classroom about public policy with volunteering and personal activities that related to politics. I ran for a couple student union elections, did not win any of those elections, but it was part of the process for me, kind of refining my interest and making some contacts, and eventually got an internship in politics and was able to kind of build a career from there. I got elected fairly young. I got elected when I was 28, so that's about 11 years ago now. It was getting elected from a sort of personal career development perspective can be challenging because you've got to put a lot of things on hold in order to campaign. It's a good job to have once you have it, but you have to be willing to take risk and to say, okay, I'm gonna not be earning as much income or any income for a period of time. while I try to pitch myself to voters. So these were parts of my journey, but now I've been elected for 11 years and really enjoying the work I'm able to do and how I'm able to continue to grow in development in this role. So since getting elected, I've tried to create more opportunities for young people who are now where I was then to get internships in politics. We take a lot of interns and volunteers in my office, trying to give people a chance who don't have political experience. I think that's a good move for employers often, because if you just say I'm only going to take someone who's already got a lot of experience in this field, you may miss out on people that are going to help to refresh the environment. But also, I think it's been really personally rewarding for me to be able to see how some of the people that I've given their first job in politics to have gone on to do great things in different parts of this political world and in other fields.
Amazing stuff. Thank you so much for, sharing that with us. I loved how, you started from the way your family shaped you into, the choice of course that you chose to do, to study in the university, and, your journey so far. And something that also jumped out at me was what you said. It wasn't always smooth. There were times when you tried and you didn't get the desired results, but it was all part of the process. And I think
Yeah,
that's critical. Thank you so much for laying that very solid foundations. Let's get into it.
yeah.
So I really want to start from where a lot of my listeners are right now. A lot of people, they've gotten the degree, they have the right qualifications, some have done the internships, and they're applying everywhere. It's just been all crickets, nothing. So what are you
Mhm.
hearing from the ground, and what do you think is actually going on? What's responsible for what we are seeing today in the Canada landscape?
Yeah. Well, I think the challenges we're seeing around employment, a lot of them are downstream from broader challenges in the economy. We need to create the kind of dynamic in this country where businesses can start and invest, where big projects can move forward without being overly reliant on government. And I think what I hear from business leaders is about how the tax and regulatory burden has made things very challenging for them. The impact on employment, particularly employment of young people, is young people are often last in, first out, right? And the ability of employers to hire young people is reflective of their optimism about the future. So if I'm a business owner and I'm thinking, man, we're gonna be growing and expanding in the next few years, I better have a pool of people that I know that I can draw on as we do that expansion. That kind of mentality is going to lead employers to bring summer students, interns, take people at an entry level, because then they can draw on those people as they grow and expand their operations. But if companies are grappling with the increasing costs, a concern about being able to continue to operate, or needing to downsize even, then they are going to be less likely to be hiring new people in entry level positions. So our jobs plan that we released in the fall, the first priority on that was about unleashing the economy. So repealing certain anti-development bills that we see as being a barrier to major projects moving forward. Also creating specific incentives to encourage investment and reinvestment in Canada. We've proposed specific measures for specific sectors, but also one of the commitments we put forward in our last election platform was no capital gains tax on gains that were immediately reinvested here in Canada. So we put these out, as well as proposals for broader tax reform that will help our country hopefully grow and be able to create more jobs and opportunities. I think also we have had an immigration system that has been poorly aligned with the needs of our economy. That is, the immigration levels have been very high, but we've also failed to recognize credentials of people who have come, and that has really exacerbated competition for those entry level positions. If someone comes with skills that they're not able to use, then they're forced to compete in an entry level position against someone who against other people who are here in Canada. So shifting to manageable levels and a real emphasis on identifying people with skills that fill gaps rather than allowing policies that contribute to entry level job competition. I think those are a couple really important things we need to do at a policy level. Also, just I think there are gaps in training as well. In that, like I think it's good for people to study something they love. I studied something that I loved and was able to find a good career in it. But you really want to find that overlap between what the labor market is looking for and the area you love. Try to find where that overlapping space is. And I think there are a lot of specific vocations where there is a lot of demand for people with those skills. But when I was going through the process, I don't think there was enough encouragement as a young person to say, look at the labor market, look at the needs that exist, and try to find skills that are going to align with the needs of the labor market.
Amazing. Amazing. So I listened to you and I heard you, but a few things that I just wanted to clarify from what you said and just to also give more context. So you mentioned the fact that there's been a lot of policy recommendations, to help with some of these barriers and all of those things that we see. So my question is the people who are directly involved with these things, and you already mentioned them, most are the young people, were they also, carried along or involved in those recommendation processes or in the policies that were being made, their ideas or how they think we can approach this, was it at any point put into consideration? So that, yeah, I don't know if that was clear.
Yeah, absolutely. When shortly after I took on this portfolio, we launched a campus tour, and the theme of that has been better or worse. Are you better or worse off than your parents' generation? So we've been going to different campuses with a big banner that says, "Are you better or worse off than your parents' generation?" And it's kind of a provocative question. People look at it, they think about it, they stop and talk if they're able. And a lot of young people have told me that they feel right now that they're worse off than their parents' generation. And two central issues that are driving that concern are jobs and homes.
Mhm.
Many young people, they're struggling to find a job, and they're struggling to imagine a scenario in which they would be able to afford a home. So then from there it goes to the policy discussion about what are the things that you're looking for that you think we can do to give you hope that you'll be able to get a good job, and you'll be able to afford a home based on what you're earning.
Amazing. The second lap to that question is on the employer side of things as well. So I heard what you said about, employers being open to employing fresh graduates for especially the ones who are thinking of the future. In all of these conversations that are going on, employers also being carried along to understand, some of those mindsets so that they are able to, so that they are open, to receiving the young people.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of conversations with employers in the context of this role as well, and it's interesting to see the challenges they face, some of the disconnects that are out there. I think one issue for employers is concern about the state of the economy in general, taxation, regulatory environment. If employers are growing and expanding, then they're going to be hiring, and if they're not, then they're not, and it's going to be those people looking for new jobs entering the workforce who are going to bear the brunt of that impact. I think there are other things in terms of employers, like there are some employers that I think have struggle more with finding young people and kind of with that hiring process, whereas there are others who struggle less with that. So it's kind of interesting some of the perceptions around young employees that vary across employers and how they navigate that. I do think the hiring process, changes in technology, online, AI, like these things are making things more challenging for young people and employers in the process of the job application process. So I was talking to someone recently, an employer, about, they were hiring for a position. They put it out. They got a massive number of applications, like over a
Mhm.
hundred. But
Amazing.
many of those people were not in the country. And then I can't remember the exact proportions, but whittling it down to say there were a lot of people who maybe were just kind of clicking apply to everything, using the easy apply tools and others. And when it actually came down to offering interviews, it was a minority of people that were offered interviews that even came for the interview. So these were the process of whittling down from getting a lot of applications digitally to finding someone can be challenging and time intensive for an employer. And obviously it's really challenging and time intensive for the young person on the other end because they're trying to apply to lots of different available positions. They're trying to, I think, put as much as they can into each application. But when you're putting in hundreds of different applications to try to get something, it can be really frustrating. So you kind of have high volume on both sides of the equation, which has, I mean, hopefully there will be tools that develop to kind of help resolve these challenges, because I think there are points of frustration on both sides. The other issue that I think is important in Canada to talk about around youth jobs is questions of relocation, because there are regions of much higher unemployment and there are regions of much lower unemployment.
Mhm.
And employers in regions of low unemployment, they really struggle to find people. But it's not so easy if you're a young person who lives in Toronto or Vancouver, let's say, to consider taking a job in a rural part of the country that you're unfamiliar with, you don't know anybody, and that maybe the culture is quite different. So one of the things I think about as well in terms of bridging that gap between employers and young people is, what are the challenges around relocation and how can we make that a more realistic possibility to kind of help address those gaps on both sides.
Amazing. Thank you so much, for sharing that. And before we move on for that question, let's talk a little bit about the credential trap for a second. And I've seen a lot of people face this. I'm originally from Nigeria. I've seen a lot of people who have done many years of experience, practicing in their various fields from back home, and then they come into Canada and they are faced with this credential trap. So if there's someone out there who is listening to this conversation today and they are facing that, what are their options and what have you seen work? What would you recommend?
Yeah, so first let's talk about it at a policy level, because I think there are things that governments at all levels can do to improve the credential recognition situation. I think we want to have a system where people have clarity very quickly on whether they'll be able to use those credentials. I mean, it would be ideal for people to be able to have a sense in advance, right? So that people that are in the process of immigrating will actually know before they come about issues of credential recognition. And so, I mean, some of the challenges of this have been around provincial and federal distinctions as well. A lot of credential recognition happens at the provincial level, but I think we need more federal leadership on it. We have a credential recognition fund within the department that I'm the critic for. The government promised in the budget to create an additional fund on top of the current fund. I think it would have made more sense to try to address the lack of effectiveness issues with the existing fund, and rather than having kind of two parallel vehicles that are supposed to be achieving the same thing. So there are a lot of policy problems on credential recognition, and as conservatives we've put a big focus on this, because you can see the impact of this too, right? People who come and they have higher level credentials, and then they're applying for entry level positions. It's not fair to them. They're worse off, but also there it exacerbates that competition among many people who are trying to get their entry level job, try to get their start. So I think for individuals in this situation, it depends a little bit on the kind of credential. I mean, there are some areas where you're relying on you're relying on regulation, let's say for a specific regulated healthcare professional, and then you have to follow the process that they have in place, and you have to try to get that credential, of course, and you don't really have a lot of options outside of following that process. In other cases, it may be more informal, right? There may be things you know how to do that it's harder to translate to explaining to an employer here. Maybe employers have certain assumptions. So, I mean, I think there's an onus on employers to try to understand how different skills can apply here. One piece of advice that I hear and that I give to young people is, explain your credentials in terms of the things you can do. For employers, okay, you can say, I've taken this course, or I've got this degree, but what does that mean in terms of what you are able to do? So I think, yeah, learning how to take a credential and explain it in terms of the concrete skills. I think that's one thing that can can help as people try to navigate these challenges.
Amazing. I love that. I love that because my next question, following up to that would have been if you could sit across the room, from one person facing this challenge, what is that one strategic shift that you would recommend, that can change the game for them immediately? So yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there's different things that make an impression on an employer. I think being able to make the case that you have the skills, that you've worked on projects related to an area. So it's about credentials, but tying those credentials to the skills and to experience. And that's also a way of showing passion for a specific area, right? If someone says, so using politics as an example, because I obviously I hire a lot of people in the political world, right? So if someone says, "Hey, I've got a PhD in political science," but they can't explain to me what they've actually done in terms of practical politics, the campaigns they've participated in, the skills they've developed, or what excites them about that activity, then that person is not going to be that attractive a hire, right? But if someone comes to me, maybe they've got an undergraduate degree in something political. Maybe they've studied something completely different. I've hired a lot of people from other fields with backgrounds in philosophy, literature, people with no university degree at all. And if someone says to me, these are some issues that I really care about, I've knocked on these campaigns, I ran for student government and, maybe I won, maybe I lost, but they're able to show an interest in the issues, a track record participating in these things, and then also say these are the skills I learned along the way, right? I learned how to communicate in a clear, concise way because that's what I had to do when I was making my pitch for a student government position, or these kinds of things mean more than the credential on paper.
Amazing. Just to learn that, do you have any piece of advice, or because I know that some of the things you've said, when people eventually get the opportunity to sit in interviews, they're able to explain some of these things, and show other aspects that makes them more qualified. But how can people get past, the gatekeepers, the ATS system, to be able to get in front of hiring managers and defend themselves?
Yeah, I you know I think it's going to depend a little bit on the person, the field. I'll share one story of
Okay.
someone I hired, and this was someone who so sometimes I'll get a CVs from people, and I'll get the impression that they're applying at every MP's office, or at least every conservative MP's office, right? So if someone is presenting themselves in a bit more of a generic way, they might be a great person, but if I'm getting the impression that I'm one of 100 emails they sent that day, like, fair enough for them. I understand you got to apply a lot of places, but it just connects with me less on a personal level
Hmm.
if that's the impression I'm getting. And also it connects with, my staff are gatekeeping these kinds of things, but they know what's interesting to me, so they'll be more likely to screen out the ones that catch my interest less. But there's one young man who I hired, and I mean, two things. One, he talked about how he'd been following the work I do in Parliament, which obviously it's a nice thing to know if someone's applying to your office and they say, "Hey, I I'm following and interested in the work you're doing." And at the time as well, I was reading a lot about the situation in Eastern Congo. I was the international development critic for our party at the time, and so was really kind of delving into understanding that situation. And he highlighted in his note to me that he was working in international development in Eastern Congo. So this is a white guy from Alberta who's living in Eastern Congo. And I said, okay, well, I don't know if I'm going to hire you, but I'm super interested in talking to you, like, in understanding the experience you had coming from here, living there, what you've learned, what you can share with me about that. And so we connected. We had a conversation. We connected on a personal as well as professional level. And he ended up working for me for a bit, and then kind of moving up to a more senior role in the Alberta government here. So just an example of kind of connecting his interests and passions with my interests. So if you're trying to pitch yourself to a particular employer, being interested in the things they're interested in and connecting your interest with theirs, to the extent you're able within the time you have. I know you got to put in a lot of applications in this environment, but making it real, making it connect to what they're working on and they care about, goes a long way. And I think that's probably applicable in in a lot of different fields, right? People who are in senior positions in business as well as other fields. They're out there talking about their interests, talking about what they're working on. And so if you can pitch yourself through a lens that really connects with what they're doing, I think that goes a long way.
Amazing. And I love that. And for me, I think what I hear you say is people, the move from generic applications to, more customized, understanding
Yeah.
what, yeah, the employers are looking for and using the exact same language so they get their attention. I love that strategic move by that young man. And I'm sure he's moved on to greater things now.
Yeah. And look, part of the thing about him is he's a really authentic person, right? Like he
Amazing.
wasn't. It's not just that he Googled me and was trying to create a pitch that aligned. I mean, yes, there's some of that you've got to do for sure, but he was genuine in his interests, and it made it a great genuine fit for us to work together.
That's beautiful. I like that again. That authentic connection, the genuine interest. That's beautiful. Thank you. So this has been very exciting. And but before we go today, I know that hope matters as much as strategy. And we've spoken a lot about, strategy to put in place today. But what gives you hope right now? What makes you believe that things can actually get better, along this topic?
Yeah, look, we are a country of so much potential, right? We have immense potential in our natural resource wealth, in our kind of natural geography. We also have so much potential in people here, right? There are so many talented people from all over the world who want to be in Canada. We've got great educational opportunities. And one of the most tragic things in life is unrealized potential. But what gives me hope about this country is it's all there. The people, the potential. You talk about that we have problems in housing affordability, but we've got more land than than almost any country in the world, right?
Yeah.
So on all of these areas, there is such potential. I think there are some policy changes we need, and that's the focus of my work as a member of parliament is advocacy around that policy work. But there's also, I think, ways that young people can, even in challenging times, can be persistent, can seize the opportunities that exist, can use their potential. It might involve stretching yourself in ways you didn't expect, right? It might involve taking a job in another part of the country. It might involve, trying out some different kinds of work or different fields, but there remains so much potential in this country. We just need to seize it.
Amazing. And, that brings us to the end of this conversation. And before I finally let you go, two things that we need you to do as we round up. First thing is to share your final words to our listeners right now, based on everything we've discussed. What will be your final takeaway, for people who are listening to this conversation? And lastly, I know that a lot of people would love to connect with you. If you want to share that, we'd be happy to have it. Take it away.
Yeah, excellent. So one thing I haven't talked about that I'll put in for final words is I believe it's really important to try to start as early as possible down the path that you think might interest you career wise. If you've got an opportunity as a teenager, even to start volunteering, to start working part time, to start delving into the area that interests you, there's nothing that's going to stop you from changing course later on if it doesn't work out, right? If you take a couple welding courses in grade 10, and maybe that'll become a career, or maybe you'll discover actually this isn't my interest and I want to do something else instead. But starting early with acquiring practical skills, working, volunteering, that will help you later on, because life brings with it this responsibility curve, right? This escalating responsibility curve, right? You have, the older you get, you start to, you have maybe you get married, you have kids, you've got more people to take care of, you've got more expenses. Maybe you reach a point where your parents have health issues or other needs, and they come to rely on you. So you're going to face this growing responsibility curve, and that is a good and natural and beautiful thing if you're ready for it. But if you don't start early enough in the career planning process, and you think, well, I've just got some time to do what I what I feel like until getting serious about your career, then it's going to be a bit harder for you to get into that ideal career at a point when you already have these additional responsibilities accumulating. So one piece of advice that I always give, I think it's good for a tough economy, but it's good for any time, which is start early. Start as early as you can, getting into those areas that are fulfilling and meaningful, and you'll enjoy it, right? If you are able to start early down the path of a career that aligns with your interests, that's going to help you find joy and meaning and fulfillment in your career, rather than saying, I need to keep working in this area that doesn't interest me that much just because I need that job to take care of my responsibilities. So in terms of people wanting to connect with me, I'd be very interested in connecting with your listeners and viewers if people are looking for more ideas, more information. I mean, I'm very active on the various social media platforms that we use. So people who want to hear the things I'm saying about these issues as well as other issues can, of course, do so. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, all that. But my office contact information is online as well. So if you want to try a personal career pitch, to me, because you're interested in politics, or if you're interested in connecting for some other reason, go for it. And one thing I just wanted to add in on those pitches is, we're very tied to the online world, right? Understandably, right? But in person, direct conversation, it still matters, and I think it still matters, especially to a generation. Not always, but a lot of times, employers are going to be from a different generation, and they will have been used to different uses of technology, different styles of communication. So being ready to make the phone call, to show up somewhere in person, as well as to make a pitch online, I think these are good ways to engage.
Amazing. And I know I promised that was the last question, but this last one, and we go. So what advice do you have for immigrants, that are feeling frustrated right now? What piece of advice would you give specifically to immigrants?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of variations in terms of the situations that people may face. We've talked a lot about the credential recognition issue, some of the challenges around that, the needs there. I think, a lot of people, when they immigrate, they come to big cities where there's also right now higher levels of unemployment. I would say, think about the opportunities that may exist in rural parts of the country as well, if you haven't considered that before. Sometimes, like, I've met people who come from big cities in other parts of the world, who, because of a career opportunity or a situation, they've ended up working in a rural part of the country, and they have just fallen in love with it. So it might not be for you, but it might be for you. So thinking about opportunities across the country, rural as well as urban, and I think this is such a great country because we're able to draw on the wisdom and experience of people from different kinds of backgrounds and from all over the world. So if you have come from another part of the world, maybe you've come from a situation of real challenges, of persecution or other kinds of challenges, then you also bring a life experience that is going to be relevant to the work you do. So being able to talk about the skills you have, but also the life experience and the knowledge you have, and how that connects to your ability to do a job, I think that's appealing to employers as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Garnet, for obliging us and for having this conversation with us today. It was really the kind of conversation that I was expecting us to have. Thank you for breaking down all of those concepts, and for helping our viewers and our listeners to, take feedbacks that they can use to improve things for themselves. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I'm sure people would like to connect with you. Thank you for sharing that information with us as well. All right, and that brings us to the end of today's episode. If you've enjoyed listening to this, make sure to subscribe and share it with someone who is at the verge of giving up right now, that there is still hope. Thank you so much, MP, for sharing hope with us on this conversation today. All right, and until I come your way again next time, everyone, keep thriving. Bye for now.
Thank you so much. That was great.